This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight now, we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants are Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Vinay Kumar, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his Mann Ki Baat address on radio on this last Sunday of June, touched upon several topics. Since this is month of June and 47 years ago in this month, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's government had imposed emergency. Prime Minister made a mention of emergency and also called upon India's youth to always remember this dreadful period of emergency where all civil rights of the citizens were taken away. He also touched upon topics of waste to wealth, water conservation, unique cycling rally in Himachal Pradesh, and upcoming religious festivals like Jagannath Yatra. Tandon Sahab, looking at the topics covered by Prime Minister, emergency was the most dominating topic on which he dwelt at length, and also recalled how that period, what it meant for the citizens of India. So the dwelling upon emergency, he also mentioned that the government, so many violations happened that like a singer like Kishore Kumar, his entry from radio was banned because he did not applaud the government of the day. So this is also an occasion for the youth, for the coming generations to know what that period was.
In fact, the 90th episode of Mann Ki Baat, Prime Minister Modi began in a quiz contest mode. He began by saying that he asked the youth, especially in the age group of 24 and 25 years, and he said, you first think seriously about the question which I am going to ask you. In a very suspenseful manner, Prime Minister asked, do you think or do you know that when your parents were of your age, once even their right to life was also snatched away? It was a very mysterious kind of a question. And then he said, you must be thinking, how is it possible? It is impossible to snatch away the right to life of any citizen. But then he said, no, once this has happened in our country, and this happened in the month of June 1975, when an emergency was imposed. In a narrative, rather an eyewitness account, because PM himself was about 25 years old at that time, a young person. And he was narrating with the countrymen who are of the age of 25 now. Then he told them that during emergency, all the rights of citizens were snatched. Among these rights was also the right to life and personal liberty, which is guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. And he said, at that time, attempts were made to crush democracy in India. Now, this is how the 90th episode began today. And Prime Minister, of course, was trying to recall and give an eyewitness account to the youth of the country now what happened in June 75. He said the country's courts, every constitutional institution, the media, everything was brought under control, and censorship was so stringent that nothing could be published without approval. And as you mentioned, that Kishore Kumar, he was blacklisted and his songs were, debarred from being played on All India Radio during the emergency. Just because Kishore Kumar refused to praise the government decision of emergency. And this is how. And he said, despite several attempts, thousands of arrests, atrocities on millions, but the faith of Indians in democracy could not be shaken. And that is exactly why the Prime Minister was narrating today, because it is the same period today when the Mann Ki Baat was being telecast.
Yes, sir. And he pointed out that this was the democratic spirit which finally won.
Yes, of course. And he said that there is no other example in the world to such victory of democratic forces over dictatorship, and that through the democratic process. And the struggle, he narrated what happened, and then he linked it, that he asked people, as you also very rightly said, he asked the youth in particular, never forget the emergency period. And now, during this time, when we are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and it is very prudent to talk about what happened in 1975. And then he went on to discuss the Amrit Mahotsav that not only tells us stories of independence from foreign rule, but also tells us the journey of 75 years of independence. And of course, we have moved ahead only by learning from every important juncture in our history.
And sir, the generations coming after that period may not know that what had happened, because we were also students at that time and you were our senior. We know firsthand that how editorial pages, many newspapers did not print anything on their edit pages, and whatever was being routed through news agencies, that was also being censored. And by that time, you were already in the profession, sir.
Of course, yes, I do remember. I was a junior reporter the night when emergency was declared, and we also witnessed the press censorship in our office. But since Prime Minister himself has given a very elaborate detail of what happened during emergency, I think we need to move on to other important aspects of today's Mann Ki Baat, particularly the field of sport
Upon the
and
enthusiasm of our youth in startups, from startups to sports world, where our youth of the country is setting new records. And he particularly mentioned in space, which he had inaugurated recently, where the youth are building smaller satellites to coincide with Amrit Mahotsav.
Yes, of course. And the big strides which India is making in the field of space particularly. But he said that till now, the perception was that this is the job of the government agencies only. No, the private sector, as you said, private startups are also doing wonderful job in the area of space, which has been remained, untouched. And he gave the example of some of the startups who are doing wonderful job. And as you said that he had dedicated, the headquarters of the in space, and he saw the ideas, enthusiasm of many young startups. And he then gave the example of some of the startups in, for example, Chennai and Hyderabad have two startups, Agnikul and Skyroot. These startups are developing launch vehicles that will take small payloads into space. And through this, the cost of space launching is estimated to come down very significantly. Similarly, he said that Dhruva Space, another startup of Hyderabad, is working on high technology solar panels for satellite deployer and satellites. And he said that PM said he met one Tanveer Ahmed and his startup. He's trying to map waste in the space. We all know there is so much of debris spread all over the space. And this young startup of Tanveer Ahmed, he is engaged in cleaning up the space, the debris. And Prime Minister was highly impressed with that. That is exactly why he made a special mention of the technology and the development and startups in the space sector. And then he said that we all know that the ISRO launch vehicle on the 30th of June. And then he went on to give some other startup details in Bangalore and certain other areas also. And he also mentioned about young Tanvi Patel, a school student of Mehsana in Gujarat. And she is working on a very small satellite which is going to be launched in space in the next few months. And the Prime Minister said this Tanvi told him about her work very simply in Gujarat. And he said, like Tanvi, about 750 school students in the country are working on 75 such satellites in the Amrit Mahotsav. And it is also a matter of joy and pride that most of these students are from small towns and remote areas.
And he also mentioned Khelo India when he touched upon the world of sports. And he made a special mention of Neeraj Chopra, who had bagged Olympic gold in javelin throw, because Neeraj Chopra also won silver in Finland recently. And Prime Minister had a word of praise for him. And he said in Khelo India, so many records have been broken by the youth. It is not that only in sports or science our youth has made great strides, but in all fields this progress can be seen, which is so crucial for our nation's all-round progress and development.
One very interesting aspect of Prime Minister Mann Ki Baat, practically every episode, is that the Prime Minister mentions these entrepreneurs, innovators, startups, players, scientists by first name. That inspires the youth in the country. That the Prime Minister is mentioning the achievers by name, as we discussed about the startups in the space sector. Similarly, today, when in fact practically every Mann Ki Baat Prime Minister does mention about our achievements in the sports sector, but today he specifically mentioned the achievements of some of very bright sportspersons, as you very rightly said. The Olympic gold medalist Neeraj Chopra, his achievements subsequently. And like that, he went on to cheer up literally those who have done wonderfully well in the Khelo India Youth Games. And, 12 records have been broken. And out of that, 11 were broken by female players. And he named the girl from Manipur who has made 8 records, Martina Devi. Similarly, Sanjana, Sonakshi, Bhavna. These names Prime Minister mentioned, who also made different records. So what I'm trying to say is, when the games and sports are mentioned, when Prime Minister mentioned these achievers by name, it sends a very clear message, encourages the youth all over the country. And he gave the example, Adil Altaf from Srinagar, who won the gold in 70 kilometers cycling. And this father of Adil Altaf does tailoring work, but has left no stone unturned to fulfill the dreams of his son. And today, Adil has brought pride to his father and the entire Jammu and Kashmir. The gold winner, he gave the example of so many other sportspersons, their family background, the humble background which they come from, whether they are from Rohtak, in many different areas of the country. And if we go on discussing these, the list is very detailed one. And they are from different parts of the country. And again, as we said, he devoted quite a lot of time on appreciating the achievements of the sportsperson in different disciplines, including, chess and other games. Mithali Raj, the cricketer, and he said she is not just a sportsperson. She has achieved much more. And as we know, Mithali Raj has recently announced her retirement. So it's a very significant thing for the Prime Minister, which is, and he never, lists the achievements of his government, but he always lists the achievements of the individuals who are making India proud.
That remains a hallmark of Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat addresses more often. 2 very quick points, Tandon Sahab, which Prime Minister today also made. Chartered accountants who helped in revival of a step well in Rajasthan, in Udaipur, he made a special mention of this, that this Bawali was neglected for a long, long time, and these youth, they revived it, and they were all chartered accountants. We will soon have Chartered Accountant Day, Prime Minister mentioned. And also, he again used Mann Ki Baat to caution people against corona, and Prime Minister said that all those who are eligible for receiving second doses or booster doses, as third dose is called, please go and get your vaccines, because he used Mann Ki Baat also to sound a note of caution against corona to citizens. These were also...
waste to wealth has also been a hallmark of Prime Minister Mann. And today he gave the example of youth who are doing it in Mizoram, youth who are doing it in Puducherry, like other places, and cycling rally in Himachal Pradesh to promote environment. All these aspects very significant, but as you very rightly said, the caution is very, very important, whether it is about Swachhata or about precautions to prevent COVID-19. That always finds mention in the Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat.
Mr. Tandon, thank you very much for this discussion. And Mann Ki Baat always will remain a source of inspiration for the country's youth and people in general. Achievers who are mentioned by Prime Minister, as you rightly said, their moral goes up by leaps and bounds. Thank you for the discussion, Mr. Tandon.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants were Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Vinay Kumar, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.